So this neurotransmitter goes from one synapse or across the synapse to the dendrite of this axon, which sets off a cell signaling pathway that passes a chemical signal down through the dendrites across the cell body into the axon, and then across the next synapse, which passes the neurotransmitter to the next synapse, which continues the signal. So in response to this chemical signal, what happens is that these sodium pumps open, drawing sodium into the axon, which raises the voltage, which opens these potassium channels. I'm sorry, this is also a sodium channel, not a sodium pump. So the sodium leaves the axon. Right, the potassium leaves the axon, which makes it more positive in the axon and more negative outside of it. So when the potassium, or when the sodium comes in, that's called depolarization. When this potassium leaves, that's called repolarization. So depolarization is a spike in the voltage. Repolarization is a lowering of the voltage, and then this sodium-potassium pump takes 3 sodium out for every 2 potassium that it brings back in. And that is called, hyperpolarization is when there's a really low voltage, which is fixed by this sodium-potassium pump. So this happens in succession, and that's called the action potential that travels along. So this chemical signal, as this chemical signal travels along, we're just going to move this because we only have one. But in reality, there's multiple sodium-potassium pumps. So each sodium channel will open, and the potassium channels will later open as the sodium comes in and then the potassium comes out, and that keeps happening further along the axon. Sodium opens, sodium comes in, potassium channel opens, the potassium leaves, and then the sodium-potassium pump, once it's at hyperpolarization, will bring it back to resting membrane potential by bringing 3 sodium out and bringing 2 potassium in, returning this to a more negative state, making it more positive on the outside. So an important distinction between this cell, this neuron, and the axon that we've demonstrated is that the axon that we've demonstrated is unmyelinated, but these are called Schwann cells, which are surrounded by myelin, which insulates the axon. So these are normally for neurons at the outer part of the brain that are larger and need to have signals that travel farther, because these Schwann cells allow signals to jump in between each of these pieces that are called nodes of RNVA. So that allows larger neurons to deliver signals more quickly, while shorter neurons will have unmyelinated axons because they don't need to deliver that signal as long of a distance. So once, after the signal has gone down the axon into what is this part called? Axon terminal, right? Yeah. Okay. So axon terminal into the next dendrite of the next, across the synapse, the next dendrite of the next cell. That's how neurons pass signals down. So muscles, for example, the signal will go through the neurons down to spinal cord, through nerves, eventually telling, setting off a new cell signaling pathway, telling muscles to contract, and also to create new memories or new information. These neurons will change to grow new connections and new synapses amongst other neurons that allow the brain to store new information.